Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be working on the $400 Dakota, which is parked just back there. We finally got it back up and running. I will explain what was going on with that, but first, we've got a part for it today that we're going to be putting on. Actually, we should have two parts today. One of them was already delivered. One should be showing up, I would think, pretty much any minute. So let's go ahead and show you what we got for the Dakota. It is in this box, and I am excited about it because hopefully this will be the redemption of me buying cheap intakes from eBay and seeing how they are, because we have an intake for the Dakota from eBay, except for instead of being $25, this one was $75, which is just because I thought that it looked like the nicest one that was on there that wasn't ruinously expensive. It is a wrinkle black finish. This is the heat shield, which number one important thing that any halfway decent intake should have. We got, looks like the couplers and hose clamps and a few pieces of hardware in there. I guess we'll see what that's all about. We got a piece of weather stripping, which I'm assuming will probably go on that heat shield. We got some beautiful tubing with a little mount right here, and oh no, oh dear, it looks like we got a little blemish in the finish. That is unacceptable for something of such high quality, but no, I actually don't care at all. So we got that piece of the tubing. We got this, which basically replaces the top of the intake that is on there right now. So this little guy to hook up to the rest of the intake system. Another little bracket for something. Basically, I mean, this looks like a throttle body spacer, I think is basically what this is doing. So if you were planning on buying a throttle body spacer anyway, don't if you get this intake kit, because this comes with it. I mean, at least as far as I know, that seems to be a throttle body spacer. I'm not sure why it comes with this, but it might become clear as we start putting this together. Speaking of clear, just like last time, we don't have instructions, but it's a cold air intake. I'm sure it's not that complicated. And we got the filter, which I don't think is oiled, so we'll have to oil that, but you know, it's a pretty normal, halfway decent looking filter. Seems like you can see the light through it pretty decently, so should have halfway decent flow. Oil that up, make sure it can take care of everything. Throw this box vaguely in that direction, and let's pull the Dakota in here and get started. But to do that, we need to get the Mustang out. So we have the Dakota in here. Let's go ahead and just figure out what exactly we're gonna be doing with it. Another thing I would like to do with the Dakota is degrease the entire engine bay with this gunk heavy duty gel engine degreaser. But you're supposed to wait till it's cooled off, and I was just driving this a minute ago and it is still pretty hot. So we'll give it a minute before we try and do anything with this. I do still need to replace the valve cover gaskets on this, but if we're gonna be digging around in there, I thought it'd be nice to kind of clean the engine bay up a bit before I get my hands super duper grubby, if I can avoid it. I'm sure it'll still happen, but hey. So first things first, what was happening with the Dakota? I had a video a while back about fixing the Dakota, doing a basic tune-up on it, and then another video saying that I fixed my truck when it wasn't broken, but now it is. Well, that was true, and I have since fixed it twice since then, and in that video, what I talked about was that the power steering pump and lines, well, basically, I think just the power steering lines were leaking quite a bit, so I replaced the power steering lines. The pump doesn't seem to be leaking. That seems to be doing just fine, but I was getting a belt squeak, and what I thought that was from was power steering fluid getting onto the belt and making it squeak. Well, I do think that was happening, and there was definitely power steering fluid present throughout the engine bay, but the reason why it was confusing and why I wasn't quite sure what it was in the first place is because while power steering fluid was getting slung around, it was also slinging around coolant because the water pump slash fan clutch assembly had also failed. So the fluid I was seeing was partially coolant and partially power steering fluid, which is why it made it really confusing to say what it was for sure, but because it was oily, I just assumed that it was power steering fluid. Well, it was also coolant, which I found later on after I fixed the power steering lines, which I didn't do in video, and I also did not do the water pump in video for two main reasons, which is A, because I was on a time crunch when I was doing it, and B, because Dakota content doesn't typically do super good, which I know is shocking that not everyone on the planet is super duper excited to see video about a $400, I mean, how old is this thing at this point? 26-year-old vehicle. And yeah, so I didn't record that, but I did do the water pump just recently. It's a really common thing that fails on these, and because the fan clutch assembly, if it wobbles basically, actually, you know what, let me show you. This is the old water pump assembly. As you can see, it is really, really, really filthy because it had failed, and you also may notice, you probably won't be able to see that, but you can definitely hear it. The amount in which this wobbles, that's not supposed to happen. And the belt was actually squeaking from that, basically wobbling around, and also coolant being sprayed onto the belt, making it squeak from that as well. So that has been fixed, everything's good, the fan is no longer wobbling, which is great, and everything's put back together. However, since my tune-up, I have still been not that impressed with what it did with the truck. You know, it starts and runs good, but it's still a little bit lethargic. It seems a little bit tired, and there's one thing that I did not replace when I did that tune-up when it comes to the ignition that I really should have, that I have no idea why, totally slipped my mind, which was a new coil. So we have a performance coil. That's right, 42,000 volts, baby. What's the stock? I have no idea. But we're gonna put a performance coil on today as well, hopefully, assuming that it shows up in time. And we'll see if that makes any difference. I honestly have no idea what to expect. But I'm gonna try to do a couple little hop-ups to this truck over time, so gonna try that. We're gonna try to put intake on this. We probably will put a V8 throttle body on this as well at some point. That's a common upgrade for this truck. Potentially 1.7 rockers at some point. Just see what we can do, different rear end gear, make it a little bit more capable for towing and stuff like that, and just a little bit quicker, and I guess we'll see. Again though, I have to stress, this is a 240 some odd thousand mile engine at this point. I know it's not gonna be perfect, so we'll see if it does anything. The thing is still running great, it's not burning oil, which is good. We'll see what the Seafoam did as it was running in it. We're gonna do an oil change with it. Actually, we could do that today as well. I don't know, we'll see what we get to. We got a lot of ideas. Let's get into it. Well, update 30 seconds later, apparently all you gotta do to get your orders from United States Postal Service is express suspicion as to whether they'll show up in time for your video, and boom, we got it. Here's the ignition coil, or it should be, and got a little something for the Mustang as well. Look at that. It's not actually that exciting. It's coil pack covers. They're just black coil pack covers. All right, there we go. I couldn't even remember the brand this was, but apparently, ooh, you dropped that. Apparently it is Excel. And this truck is going to excel at being less crappy once we put this baby on there. And this should be ridiculously simple if I'm not mistaken. The real question is, does it come with a sticker? It doesn't come with a sticker? Why did I even buy this? It also has lethal voltage. So, you know, comforting as always. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's just mounted on the side of the engine where we're gonna be taking off the intake anyway. So let's just get started with that. And I apologize in advance for the camera angle that you're about to see. I still need to get a new tripod, and my tripod that I have right now is A, annoying to set up, and partially broken. So for the safety of this camera equipment in the first place, we're gonna use the vlogging setup, which means I have limited places I can put it. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Let's just go to the shot. Well, first things first, we gotta get the intake off of this thing. And ooh, this engine is hot. And it is hot outside today, if you can't tell by my incredibly fashionable shorts. Should I have used an extension? Probably. Did I use an extension? Absolutely not. So those of you that watched, good Lord, these clips are so annoying. They later changed them a little bit and made them slightly less annoying, but this version of them requires a lot more force than you would think to remove them. But those of you who watched the video where we did the tune-up on the Dakota may remember that I put a new engine air filter in it when I did that. So we are sacrificing our new engine air filter unless the cold air, whatever, intake ends up being complete garbage, in which case we go back to stock and then we can use the engine air filter. Or maybe I'll make a friend who has a 1997 Dakota and desperately needs an engine air filter, and I can be like, bro, I got you. It's still so clean. Also, another thing, if anyone watching this video also watched the tune-up video on the Dakota, one thing that I didn't realize at the time but drives me nuts now is that in the video I said that 8mm is an identical size to 15/16. I have no idea why I said 15/16. That's identical to 24mm basically. What is an identical size to 8mm is 5/16, not 15/16. I don't know what was wrong with my brain on that day in comparison to normal, but apparently something was. I just realized that this doesn't actually have a hole through there. So I might have to drill that out, assuming that's actually in the right spot, which, I mean, I think it is, vaguely. All right, that's disconnected. So we should be able to disconnect the coil, which is right here. And for some reason, it looks like it's held on with Phillips. Why? World's most useful tool no one thinks of though, right angle screwdriver. These things are so useful in just random situations. And you can get them for like $2 at Harbor Freight, so there's that. Can't tell if that's spinning it or if it's just camming out really slowly. It is spinning! Just! Wow, these are really, really terrible threads in that case. Oh, jeez. Did we just break it? Yep, that just broke. The things that you just don't expect are going to be hard when working on cars. Like, I didn't think that replacing the coil was gonna be the thing that was annoying. I didn't really think anything was gonna be annoying in this. Well, I have a few ideas. I'm not sure how many, if any, are good ideas, but... Okay, well, got that off. I've got to get the 2 broken studs out as well. All right, we've got that all drilled out eventually. And now we're gonna see if we can stick this bolt through here. All right, so there's the coil pack right there. We got it hooked in with this bolt right here. And you know, it won't move. I know this bolt's a little long for this spot. I don't have anything to cut it down right now. And that should be absolutely fine. You know, it's not contacting anything, it's not rotating. That'll be just fine as it is. It just looks a little bit jankier than I would prefer, but hey, I'll take janky as long as it's functional. All right, time to get to the intake install. Now the question is, how does this fit on here? Like, is that the right spot for that? I'm gonna assume it probably is, so let's just drill this hole through here. That was really hard. Looks like there's a very real possibility that this bracket just got really bent in shipping, or is just bent completely the wrong direction from how it's supposed to be bent, because according to the picture from none other than Speed Daddy, if you look at that bracket on there, it goes kind of the opposite direction of what this does, and this is a much more extreme bend. So I guess I'm gonna try to just fix that with the vise, just to try and save this finish. Not that it really is like that big of a deal. We're gonna put this rag on here, but we're gonna be doing some pretty intensive bending, so I don't know if it's actually gonna save the finish. Ooh. Oh yeah, that finish is chipping right off. Goodbye, wrinkle black. We can always repair this in the future and just respray this part of it. Also, I mean, if this is any sort of indication of the general quality of eBay parts, notice how smooth that is underneath, which means there's absolutely zero prep work that goes into this painting whatsoever. Yeah, more like that. More like that, but not exactly that. Well, we're gonna have to keep adjusting this, so we'll see how that bend looks, and I'm probably gonna have to bend it more. Oh yeah, we're nowhere near yet. Well, let's see if we can flatten this out so we can bend it at a different spot. I think we need a little bit more of a bend than that, but we're pretty close at this point to, I think, having decent fitment. All it took was completely reversing the direction of this altogether. And this is not an example of the $25 intake install on the 350Z where I was just confused, referencing the only reference that I have, which is the picture for it on the eBay listing for this intake. This is exactly what it's supposed to be like, is basically what I'm doing to it, and that is not how it was out of the box. So, as far as I'm concerned, this time it's not my fault. Last time, well, we don't gotta talk about that. Last time, there's nothing I can say that not everyone in the comments has already said. But that was 6 years ago, now I'm 22, and now I totally know exactly what I'm doing. And I've also learned how to lie convincingly. So in order to get this to fit, we have to trim a little bit of this, which is not ideal because that's what's supposed to seal, but that's what we have to do. So, no choices here, just determination to make things work. That's not the cleanest cut I've ever done in my entire life, but I'll take it. It appears as though this is fitting pretty decent at this point. So I think that that'll do. So here's the thing. I realized that I had not mounted the throttle body spacer, so we're about to do that now. Move the throttle body out of the way like that. Pull that gasket right up. That was so simple. The surface under there looks perfectly clean. Again, I'm not really sure why this came with a throttle body spacer. It's kind of weird, but you know, I guess I'll take it, whatever. Should increase performance, bro. How much? Probably negligible in every single way. That just broke off in the intake. Of course that's what happened, because why wouldn't it? Well, I don't have stuff to get that out, so I guess we're just gonna tighten down the other three for the time being. You know, it's cheap hardware. I'm not that surprised, unfortunately. I don't know if these are just barely off in thread pitch or something, but it seems like they're getting too tight for my comfort too early. They thread in a few times like they're the right thread pitch, so I don't know. I'm gonna take both the original bolts and these into the hardware store and get some bolts that I know are gonna work for this that aren't going to break off inside of the intake like that one did. So I'll be back. Well, we are back from the hardware store, and we went ahead and basically assembled the intake. Now, there's a few random bits of garbage that are left over that I do not know entirely what they're for. Again, no specific instructions, so like I do not know what this piece is for. I have a couple extra pieces of hardware and stuff like that. And the way the heat shield ended up mounting in there, I'll show you how it was mounted. I didn't end up, I basically had to take where I had originally imagined that the tube itself was gonna mount to. So right now the tube basically isn't mounted to anything. It's sort of floating and or resting on the heat shield, which is fine. I will get that all figured out eventually. It's not a particularly high quality, super impressively made kit, so there is some fitment issues. Oh well, I'll go ahead and show them to you right now. Okay, so you can see this is where the heat shield ended up right here, and it ended up being mounted right down there. And you can see where basically originally I had assumed this was going to mount from that bolt. It really can't, no matter what way I try to do it. So eventually I'll probably drill a hole and end up using this little thing to basically keep it mounted. So that's that. Everything's pretty simple. We got the throttle body and spacer installed and everything good with that. We got to hook up a couple of those connectors again. Then we'll go ahead and get the battery hooked back up and it should be ready to start. Also, one other thing to note is that the bolt that had broken off in the intake manifold is still broken off in there, so I have 3 out of the 4 bolts holding the throttle body down. It's held very solid, and with that intake in there, hopefully it's crushed evenly, that there's not gonna be like a massive vacuum leak or something like that. If it becomes an issue, then I will make sure that I take care of it. I'll probably end up taking care of it in the future in the first place, but I don't have bolt extractors or anything like that here right now. So I'll end up doing that in the future, but for right now, I have to get this up and running so I can take it to work later. So I didn't really have the choice of going through that at the moment. So let's get those connectors hooked up. I barely noticed, but yeah, that seems to be plugged in. Now let's get the battery back up and connected, but I'm gonna hit those posts as well as the connectors with a wire brush in advance just to get a little bit of that corrosion off of there. It's not super bad. I think it had been worse before, and either I or maybe my dad at some point had cleaned it up, but while we're here, might as well do what we can to make that not a problem. Should be tight enough. Let's open up the garage door and see if it starts up. All right, hopefully everything we did works. All right, we're gonna go for a drive and see how it does. All right, we're gonna see if this has a little more pep in its step than normal or if it feels about the same. Gonna let it warm up for a minute or two before we get on it to see how it's doing. All right, we're going up to a merge on this interstate here, so we'll see how it feels like it does. Different. It's kind of hard to say. I didn't figure it was going to, but it seems like it's running decent, and for all I know, replacing the coil might help with like fuel economy. I have no idea. We'll find out over time, but as long as it didn't get worse, we're all good. So seems to be pretty decent, so I'll take it. So you might have been able to hear there the rather constant belt whine that is coming from the truck in general, which has just been the case since I replaced the water pump. It might have been doing that, I just didn't really pay it much mind or pay attention to it before. It probably just needs a new serpentine belt, or maybe the like idler pulley bearing or something is starting to go out. I don't know. I'm not that worried about it. If it gets worse, then it's something that I'll address. But, I mean, the truck seems to be running pretty good, so I don't really have any complaints about the way that it's running. I don't really think it's, like, improved over where it was necessarily, but it's not worse, and that's good. You might have also been thinking as I was installing the intake, hey, you said you were gonna clean the engine bay. Why did you put in the intake that can't get water on it before doing that. And yeah, good point. And the only reason why really I addressed it earlier is because the engine was too hot for me to use this on at the moment, which will be the case again. However, I did say I was gonna do an oil change, so let's do the oil change, I guess. First things first, we're gonna pop open the hood. Also, if I didn't say this, I did actually oil the filter as well before I put it on. One thing that's really annoying is that there's some stuff that's just like in the way of how this intake works, and it's like an AC line, I believe, like a high pressure AC line that is literally directly in the way of where this filter goes. Maybe it's not there on the V8 trucks, I don't really know, but it is on this one. So I barely got the filter to fit there within like an inch of its life. So it's there, but you know, like I said, I'm pretty happy with how everything is. We got the coil hooked up there. So we're gonna pop open the oil fill cap, and actually let's get a reading on it. And the reason why I am curious right now as to what the oil level is because this truck never burns oil ever, but this is the transmission fluid, so I don't know why I'm checking that. This is the engine oil. This truck never burns any oil, like pretty much ever. However, I do have a few ounces of seafoam in the oil, which interestingly, when I checked it last time before it went out of commission for a while, it did burn a little bit of the oil with the seafoam in it. Yeah, it's burned a little bit, but not much, all things considered. So, this truck is so goofy to me because in some ways it runs very, very, very well. And in some other ways, it's just old and tired. It just keeps running. I'm gonna keep using it as long as it keeps running. All right, let's get the jack out here. Get some jack stands. Yes, I do have a Dakota jack and jack stands. Yes, I do love Harbor Freight, and let's not pretend like we don't all. One thing that I would really like to invest in is a creeper, something I just have never bought for some reason. Really need one when crawling around on a garage floor. Chalk the wheels just in case. Don't worry about me, I'm just gonna lay down this fender guard thingy-mabobber down here so that I can actually be on the floor without hating everything. We're gonna need a filter wrench for that. Does that really have that little clearance against the exhaust? First of all, wish I had gloves here right now, but I don't think I do if I don't remember correctly. Second of all, I don't feel like I've ever done an at-home oil change without spilling something. I used to do oil changes without much mess whatsoever when I was doing it as a job, but not anymore, apparently. Also, interesting thing. Pretty sure rear main seal on this thing is pretty leaky, just judging by there's oil under there, and it looks like it's coming from rear main seal, I would assume. I don't know where else it would be coming. Well, partially valve cover gaskets also is another thing that I know of, but probably has a leaky rear main seal, which makes it interesting that it doesn't seem like it hardly ever uses any oil. I'm surprised about that. Also, Transpan, despite the fact that I resealed it not that long ago, is once again leaking. So that's cool. I think one of the bolts, the threads were kind of stripped out, but I'm gonna go back under there and like torque everything up just to make sure it's all right. And I don't know, we'll go from there. But first, we gotta put the new filter on this thing and fill it up with some oil. Well, maybe not first, but we do need to do that. The old Mopar 090 filter. While that's still dripping, we're gonna go ahead and bust out the torque wrench and attempt to torque those to the proper spec. Scratch that idea. I think the threads are too screwed up on all of them, so there's no way they're making it to that torque. I tried 2 different bolts. One of them just started to strip out. I'm like, oh, great. And I knew there was one on there that was a little bit stripped, like I think I said before. So I went for another one, did the same thing. So I just made sure they were all snug as much as possible. But I think I'm probably gonna have to pull this stupid Transpan off of there again at some point and re-tap all of those threads and make sure we can actually get it down to the proper torque, because that's probably what the problem is, but there's nothing I can really do about it at this exact moment. So we're just gonna have to deal with it. So let's finish up this oil change, get the oil put in here, and then make sure it's running, and I think we'll be good for this video. One thing that I wish was different about this jack is I wish it was a little less touchy as you lower it, but you have to be very, very, very gentle with how much you turn the handle to lower it down. To get it to go down slowly, or it just drops it real quick. Otherwise, it's great though. And it's time to finally use the oil that I've shown in multiple videos at this point. This takes 4 quarts. We're gonna measure out a quart and then put the rest of it in there and see where that lands us and just adjust it from there. Okay, that is empty. Now we'll go ahead and measure what our oil level is like before starting and then after starting. Well, according to this, that's about right. Looks like we could add just a tiny bit, so. Alright, that is right about perfect. Alright, well, outside of cleaning up the little bit of oil spillage that we have under there, the Dakota is done. We're done working on it for today. You know, everything seems pretty decent. We got some stuff to address in the future, obviously. It's an old truck. It's got problems. It's gonna continue having problems, I'm sure, for the rest of its life. But that's all right. I'm willing to take it on. I really like this truck. And so, potentially might see some stuff in the future for this thing. Just stay tuned, and then you'll know. I also want to apologize, of course, that you guys are seeing this video on Saturday instead of the normal Wednesday or Thursday. This is my cat, Simon. And I'll give you Simon's story. He's a little antsy right now because he's had a very eventful few days. Simon was a kitten when I found him, and I rescued him from a horse barn, basically. I came back later on, ended up taking him home with me, and he was covered in fleas. I know, buddy. I know. He's so mellow being held most of the time, but he's had a weird couple days, so he's just a little bit weirded out by everything right now. But it's okay, no, buddy. I'll set him down and let him walk in here if he'd like to. But Simon, I adopted him from that horse barn, and he was a kitten, and he had a cold, and he literally had, like, I'm not even joking, like 200 fleas on him when I adopted him. And I took him home, and my mom and I at the time cleaned him up and got rid of his fleas, and treated him for fleas and everything. And I actually originally picked him up and took him home as a wedding gift for my wife, believe it or not. I gave him to her the day before we got married, and he was a super sweet little kitten, and he actually ended up getting sick shortly after we brought him home, and he was very lethargic, and we ended up getting him, I think, some antibiotics from the vet for that, and he's been doing well ever since until a couple days ago. On Sunday, we came home from work at like 1 a.m. and I noticed he seemed like he was acting off. And when I picked him up, normally, which granted this video is not a great representation of this, but normally when I pick up Simon, he'll let me hold him however I want. He's super mellow and tame, and he's very easygoing and tolerant. And he seemed stiff and uncomfortable, and like he didn't want me to touch him and stuff like that. And I was like, what's going on? And he was very, very tense. He was also struggling to, and like straining to pee. And then we later saw shortly thereafter that he was bleeding as well. So we ended up having to take him to basically the animal emergency room that's in this area, and they had to treat him for that, for a urinary blockage, which for cats can be very, very deadly if not paid attention to and treated shortly after it's noticed. Apparently in some cases it can be deadly in as few as like a few hours after you notice. And he was not in like critical condition, but he was in a lot of pain, the poor little guy. So we took him to the animal vet, the animal ER, and they took care of him and everything. And he's doing good now. After that, we transferred him to the vet and they had him overnight. He's doing good now. He needs to go on a different kind of food, and we just have to, you know, take care of him a little closer than usual. You might have noticed that his paws were shaved in certain places as well. That's because he had an IV basically in his bloodstream and stuff like that. And he's doing okay now, and I'm super happy about that. Simon is really, really special to my wife and I. He's one of 4 animals that we have, and he is a really, really awesome, super sweet cat. And we were super scared that something was gonna happen to him. So with everything that's been going on with Simon, and we've had to transfer him around to the ER and to the vet and stuff like that, I didn't realistically have any time to film content. Everything's all right now, but it almost was not. So it's currently Tuesday at like 7 p.m. right now. I have to go to work. Should have been going to work like an hour ago. So from Simon and me, we appreciate you guys watching and understanding, and we're super happy that he's healthy and he's back. As I'm recording this, when I left to get parts from the hardware store, we actually had just picked him up from the vet. So we haven't had him for a few days. So yeah, I mean, he's good now. This is good. Everything's all good. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for stopping by and watching the videos. Hopefully it was entertaining for you, and I will see you guys all in the next one.